Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Well, it would be nice if I had myself on screen when the intro ended. Welcome back, everybody, for a little bit more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Let me make sure I got myself on Do Not Disturb here. Good. We're all set there. All right. This is going to be a relatively short video, but I wanted to get this out because I had this announcement a few days ago and I haven't done the video yet. The attorney for the plaintiff in one of the 3 lawsuits against Scientology and one of the trafficking lawsuits against Scientology has issued a public statement that does explain why it is so important that in this particular lawsuit, they continue to move forward, even though the lawsuit has been bogged down hopelessly in Scientology's sham, fraud, so-called internal religious arbitration fiasco. For those of you who don't know which lawsuit I'm talking about, this is the story of a woman named Val Haney, who worked directly for David Miscavige and his wife, Shelley Miscavige. A number of years ago, Valerie escaped from Scientology's secretive international management headquarters out north of Hemet, California, by jumping into the trunk of a car that was on the base that was owned by a non-Scientologist actor who just happened to be on the base shooting a Scientology film. She escaped from Scientology, making the 90-minute drive secretly in the trunk of a car from the base in Riverside County to Los Angeles. After this occurred, Scientology managed to convince her to come back and leave the so-called right way on their terms, which involves doing interrogations. It involves signing forms, signing away your rights, saying you're bad, Scientology's great, David Miscavige is the bomb, and all this kind of stuff. Years later, Valerie files a lawsuit against David Miscavige and Scientology. Scientology convinces a court that this lawsuit cannot move forward in the court system, and it must go into Scientology's internal religious arbitration. The court ruled in Scientology's favor. Since then, Scientology has now dragged Valerie through 5 days, 8 hours each day, of unbelievably one-sided, unfair, abusive, this process. It's an imaginary process. It's nothing you would normally think of as far as an arbitration. If you think arbitration as something that's supposed to be sort of fair and balanced, you have an uninterested third party as a mediator, preferably a retired judge. No. This is an internal religious arbitration, and it means Scientology can do whatever the heck they want. And they have convinced judges so far that this is true. Anyhow, I'm just going to read for you the statement that Valerie's attorney, Graham Barry, put out because he makes some very compelling arguments and even sources from Scientology's own material. You guys will see what I'm talking about here. Well, it really would be nice if I had everything ready to go. All right, here we go. This statement begins, "This morning I appeared by video call, as did all counsel in the Haney versus Church of Scientology International case. It was a short hearing. William Foreman is the attorney for RTC, Religious Technology Center. That's the organization that Scientology's leader, David Miscavige, runs. William Foreman informed the court that the court had no power to do anything and that the court should just set another status conference 8 months out." I just realized I didn't totally frame what this statement is in reference to. So Scientology, the only Scientology arbitration that has ever been conducted in the history of this sector of the Galactic Federation with respect to Scientology is one just a few years ago in Luis Garcia's lawsuit. That entire arbitration finished in 1 day. Okay, so first, Valerie Haney, they subjected her to 2 days of arbitration and then said, that's it for now. We'll finish at a later time. Then months later, they did another 3 days. Okay. After each one of these sessions, Valerie and her team put together a report of what happened because Valerie's not allowed to have an attorney present at the arbitration. She's not allowed to record the proceedings in any way. And she's not allowed to present any of her own evidence. So after each one of these sessions, Valerie and her team very thoroughly document, I believe they do an audio recording. I think they have a court reporter present, some sort of court reporter service. They document exactly what occurred. So after each one of these sessions, her team has filed a report with the court just as a record of how horribly insane, ridiculous, and abusive this procedure is. The reason this current filing, this current filing for the hearing that's happening is occurring is because this status conference was supposed to be a status conference to review everything that had occurred. The arbitration was supposed to be done already. So this status conference was on the record. It was on the schedule. But instead, Scientology showed up to the status conference prepared to ask the judge for another 5 days to basically re-abuse Valerie. They're taking someone who escaped from Scientology, is a former Scientologist, is considered a suppressive person, is considered by Scientology to be an enemy of all mankind. And they are forcing Valerie to return for what Scientology says is basically a religious tribunal. It's absolutely bonkers. And so Valerie's team, Granberry, was filing this to basically say, please, if you're not going to make a ruling that this arbitration is unconscionable and cannot carry forward, at least set a date that they have to be done by. All right, so let's see what he has to say here. All right. William Foreman informed the court that the court had no power to do anything and that the court should just set another status conference for 8 months out. The judge informed me, Granberry, the plaintiff's attorney, that the judge had no power to end the arbitration. I noted that the Scientology arbitration agreement contains no time limit, and I drew the judge's attention to the Code of Civil Procedure, section 1283.8, which provides in that situation, a party may petition the court to fix a time within which the arbitration award must be made. And he links to the California Code, which I'm going to share with you because I thought this was absolutely amazing. California Code of Civil Procedure, as quoted, as referenced by Granberry, it says, the award shall be made within the time fixed, therefore, by the agreement, or, if not so fixed, within such time as the court orders on petition of a party to the arbitration. The parties to the arbitration may extend the time either before or after the expiration thereof. A party to the arbitration waives the objection that an award was not made within the time required unless he gives the arbitrators written notice of his objection prior to the service of a signed copy of the award on him. It's right there in the law. If the arbitration agreement does not set a time frame for the proceedings to be completed, then on petition by one of the parties to the arbitration, the court may so order. Why in the world is the judge saying she has absolutely no ability to do that? All right. The judge informed me, okay, that's fine. We already read that part. The judge was dismissive. I also informed her that I was not the cause of the delay because of any calendar conflict. The plaintiff, Valerie Haney, is also represented by an out-of-state law firm, which had a calendar conflict. The attorneys in that firm applied for pro hac vice admission, but were denied at the hearing where the court ordered the case to arbitration. The judge then set a further status conference for February 20, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. in her department 37. At William Foreman's request, the judge said she did not want any status conference statements filed before that status conference. Guys, I may not know much. I am not an attorney. I just grew up in a cult. But the fact that the court is not only saying Scientology can do whatever they want to this woman, not only that, I do not want to receive any reports or filings from her with any updates about what's happening in this proceeding. It's none of my business. I just can't believe it, you guys. Okay. It goes on to say, religious arbitration in the hands of Scientology is so abusive of Valerie, who is clearly treated as being a suppressive person, to be, quote, destroyed by any means possible, unquote. The church's own website states that in Scientology, any justice action in Scientology is expected to be concluded within 1 week. Now, when I read that, which I only read it about 30 minutes ago, I was like, where does it say that? I was like, I can remember a policy letter regarding committees of evidence that talks about stale justice, but what is Granberry referencing? And he had a link there. And this is amazing. And honestly, I don't know why the judge can't take this into consideration. All right, I'm going to share it with you. So this is from Scientology's own website. What is Scientology.org? Scientology Ethics and Judicial Matters. The sole purpose of justice in Scientology is to establish the truth of a matter and determine guilt or innocence. With this established, proper restitution of wrongs can be made. Scientologists with disputes can use Scientology justice to settle matters amicably. Any Scientologist can avail himself of the justice system to resolve civil disputes, be they with another Scientologist or even a non-Scientologist. And because Scientology justice is fair, economical, and occurs without delay, Scientologists find it of great value. Any justice action in Scientology is expected to be concluded within 1 week of being convened, saving the parties involved the unnecessary stress of lengthy delays. Situations are resolved rapidly, the outcome resulting in the greatest good for the greatest number. Greatest good for the greatest number is a phrase in Scientology that refers to the way L. Ron Hubbard defined the word ethical. He divided life up into 8 dynamics, 8 thrusts towards survival. Dynamic 1 is self. Dynamic 2 is family. Dynamic 3 is groups. Dynamic 4 is all humankind. Dynamic 5 is all non-human life. Dynamic 6 is the physical universe. Dynamic 7 is the spiritual universe. And dynamic is eternity or infinity, or as non-Scientologists call it, God. L. Ron Hubbard says that any action should be viewed as whether it creates the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. And if it does, it is by definition ethical. It's amazing. L. Ron Hubbard says that in Scientology, all justice occurs within 1 week, unless the justice involves an enemy of Scientology. And then they will convince the judge, we can do whatever the hell we want, and you can't say anything about it, because these aren't just policies. They are religious scripture, Your Honor. And you as a judge are not allowed to interpret our religious scripture. That would violate our First Amendment rights to practice our religion freely. This is honestly the fraud that Scientology has perpetuated on the courts. Okay, so back to the statement. We have to get this case before the California Supreme Court and maybe the Supreme Court of the United States in order to get a judicial revision of the rights of former member plaintiffs in a religious arbitration. And that unconscionability includes thought control and mental manipulation. We need a determination that a former member is no longer bound by an religious arbitration agreement where secular crimes and torts are alleged. Best regards, Graham Barry, attorney. There you have it, folks. So if anyone has wondered, what is the purpose of Valerie continuing to choose to go through this procedure? Because anybody could bail on this right now. If Valerie really wanted to, she could be like, I'm out, peace, I'm not doing this anymore. Because if someone looks at this, they could go, like, look at what happened in the Luis Garcia arbitration. He went through years and years and years and years and years of litigation just to be subjected to the first ever of its kind religious arbitration. Scientology had to admit in Luis Garcia's lawsuit that they had never, in the entire history of Scientology, ever held an internal religious arbitration. And when they admitted that, they then said to the judge, well, the judge asked, well, what are the policies? What are your policies and procedures that govern such a procedure if you've never held one before? And Scientology, like, panicking, like, oh my God, nobody's ever asked us this before, because we've never done a religious arbitration before, because it's just a sham. It's a fake. It doesn't exist. We made it up so that we could put it in contracts so that people couldn't sue us, but no one's ever tested us on this before. And they said, oh, there's a Scientology policy letter about a Scientology justice procedure. It's called a committee of evidence. And that is the procedure that we follow for an internal religious arbitration. They just made that up in court. Is there a policy letter called committees of evidence? Yes. Is that a justice action in Scientology? Yes. It is actually the most severe and serious, highest level form of Scientology justice action. Does it have anything to do with an internal religious arbitration? Absolutely not. But what's interesting about Scientology saying that the policies that govern their religious arbitration are the policies that concern a committees of evidence, is that takes us back to this quote from Scientology, from their very own website, where it says, quote, any justice action in Scientology is expected to be concluded within 1 week. Why is that important? Because if someone goes, wait, that quote refers to a justice action, but this is an internal religious arbitration. Arbitration and justice are different things. Scientology is the one that said the policies that we use to govern the entire spirit and procedure of our internal religious arbitration is the policies on a committee of evidence. A committee of evidence is Scientology's most severe form of justice action. And therefore, if a judge chose to examine the facts without getting into scripture, belief, this or that, just Scientology's own words about it, what it says on its face, Scientology's policy says on its face, not a matter of belief, all justice actions are to be concluded within 1 week. The judge might simply ask Scientology's attorneys, it says on your own website that all justice actions are to be concluded within 1 week. Can you please tell us why it has taken you over 8 months to a year? By the time we'll have wrapped this up, why will it have taken almost 1 year to perform a religious arbitration when the only other religious arbitration you've ever conducted in your history took 1 day? I'll take any explanation will do. If the judge were to say that, Scientology's attorneys wouldn't even try to give an explanation. They would say, Your Honor, you are violating our clients' First Amendment rights to practice their religion without interference from the government. It's gotten so silly, you guys. This is why it's important for Valerie and her team to keep going, because this has to be concluded so that it can be appealed, so that it can be appealed to the California Supreme Court, so that it can be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, so that we can get a decision. And again, I'm going to quote Graham Barry's letter here. We can get a decision that is a judicial revision of the rights of former member plaintiffs in a religious arbitration, and that unconscionability includes thought control and mental manipulation. We need a determination that a former member is no longer bound by a religious arbitration agreement where secular crimes and torts are alleged. That is why it's important. That's what's on the line. That's what the stakes are. And it is not a pretty position for Valerie to have to be in. Scientology is just going to make it as long and as painful for her as possible. Scientology's goal at this point is to get Valerie to drop out. That's what they're trying to do. I think they might have realized they sort of screwed up by picking this particular fight, and that is why they're doing it the way that they are, to get Valerie to drop out. Because I think what they're doing and the way they've handled this is so unconscionable that even they know that if this thing actually concludes and Valerie actually hangs in there, that Graham Barry has all the ammunition he needs to hopefully, Xenu willing, take this as far up as it needs to be taken until we get an actual decision that renders these arbitration agreements completely null and void on any former Scientologist in the future who is suing Scientology over secular crimes and torts. All right, you guys, that's all I got. Thank you for hanging out with me. Much more to come later this day. I'm going to be experimenting with some different streaming platforms and microphones. Hope you guys are willing to hang in there with me. Heather Gillette, thank you for becoming a channel member. Casey Cat, can she appeal to a higher court? This is total abuse of power and law. Yes, and it looks like when it's all said and done, they will be appealing to a higher court. And Virginia Martinez, thank you very much for the super sticker. All right, guys, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe